This is Saison D'Austin by South Austin Brewing. It's a Belgian-style Saison crafted by an American who grew up in India and discovered he really liked beer when he had his first Chimay in Washington, D.C. If you enjoy beers that are a bit on the sweet side with a ton of character and great fruit notes, you're really gonna dig the Saison D'Austin. This beer also has a bit of flash and bang. It's bottled in the old world style with a cork and a muselet, so you can pop this bad boy open with some flair and panache. And like most Belgian-style beers, there's a healthy dose of ABV waiting underneath the cork for your delight. In this case, it's 8%. I'm Mike Langford, and this is Local, a show about locally brewed craft beer. Today I'm at Alamo Drafthouse in Austin, Texas. Alamo Drafthouse is a movie theater chain that is revolutionizing the way people go to the movies. Have you ever wished you could have a couple of beers and some great food brought right to your seat while you watch a movie? Yeah, it's all that and more here. At their newest location in the Lakeline area, there's also a full bar too. It's called Glass Half Full, and I'm meeting Jordan Weeks, the founder of South Austin Brewing here, to explore his corked creation. Jordan has been brewing Belgian-style beers for 20 years. He's a traditionalist with a deep appreciation for the history of brewing. He's also a big fan of yeast. Oh yeah, baby, yeast.
Good, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
All right, so I gotta tell you, I'm stoked to have you on the show. 6 or 7 months ago, I noticed in my HEB a new bottle appearing on the shelves that I just had to try, and it's South Austin Brewing. So it's really thrilling to see you here on the show.
That's great.
What's been interesting to me, since I moved here to Austin and started exploring all the local beers on tap, a lot of the beers that I like to drink when I'm out at a restaurant that are on tap aren't necessarily available in my grocery store, and I know some of that's changing and so forth. So yours is, which makes my life at home much better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
But we came out with bottles right out the gate because we wanted to do Belgian style beers.
Okay.
So we decided to package in traditional Belgian bottles.
And your bottles, I mean, they can double as a weapon. I mean, these things are
You could drop it on the floor and it'll bounce.
Is there a reason for the thickness of the bottle? Is it a safety thing? Because you're corking the bottle too.
It's an ancient tradition. I mean, the person who came up with this was Dom Perignon. He was the one who invented all the carbonated bottle technology. And he experimented with different thicknesses of blown bottles, different lids.
Yeah.
He did leather and wood and hemp and wax coverings, and he finally came up with the best material, which was cork and a wire muselet, which in French means muzzle.
Okay.
So this is an ancient technology.
We've got to get into it. I'm sorry, I'm thirsty, I'm dying here.
Let's go. Let's go.
That's just a cool sound, by the way.
These are naturally carbonated, so we dose it with a little bit of sugar and then put it in our conditioning room for about a week. And then we start to pop bottles at random here and there until we find the perfect carbonation level, which is about 2.5 volumes.
Okay.
Other beers are about 3 or 4 volumes even.
What does the volumes mean when you're describing that?
It's how much carbon dioxide is saturated in the solution.
Okay.
So most Belgian beers tend to be lighter carbonated. So we keg our beer and we artificially carbonate it to about 2.5 volumes, which is also relatively light. So as you can see, the head is already starting to die off, but you still get nice lace.
I always refer to that as like the viscosity, right? It's a very heavy mouthfeel. Because this is sweeter?
We cut it off at 8% alcohol. So there are a lot of residual malt sugars left in there for that sweetness. Like most Belgian traditional beers, we hop on the sweet side. We just put enough hops in there to balance it out and cut that sickly sweet, teeth-hurting sweet out of it. So what we're trying for is a perfect balance of malt sugar and hop lupulin. These glasses really concentrate the aroma fabulously. I like how Alamo Drafthouse is serving it in these perfect tulips. Because you get a nice bulb here, which will keep it cold, and then it'll concentrate all the flavors and aromas in this narrow area here. And when you put your nose up to it, there's enough room at the top, because it flares out, to put your nose in it. And that gives the perfect experience. Now you can really smell the black pepper and all the flavors, the fruit and the tangerine and the overripe plum come from the yeast. We don't add any botanicals to this beer. So the yeast that we use, it's Saison 2 from White Labs. It finishes out much quicker than the average Saison, but it really gives those phenolic esters and the correct black pepper, which is unique to Saisons.
Well, that's interesting. Very similar to wines, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the flavors you're getting in a beer are actually coming naturally from the brewing process, right?
That's correct.
And so you think of a beer and people describe it as citrusy or piney or whatever the flavor that's in the beer. Very often it's not an infused flavor. Every single thing you're tasting is a natural occurrence of a process.
Almost all of our flavors come from the yeasts metabolizing those malt sugars, and we don't use much hops. I mean, I put enough hop in the end of the boil so that you can smell the hop coming off of it, but the flavors come from the yeast metabolizing the sugars and creating polyphenols, phenolic flavors, and esters and fruit flavors that are naturally occurring molecular biological activity from the yeast. And we don't really understand a lot of it. I mean, yeast is still a mystery.
You need shirts printed up that say, yeast is a mystery. I like, you can actually use it as your tagline for the brewery.
And that's why my favorite beers are Belgians, because the terroir for yeast in the air in Belgium, Saccharomyces cerevisiae is very different depending on where you are. In Belgium, the Saccharomyces cerevisiae that's in the air is very alcohol tolerant. It also creates these strange fruity esters and flavors during the fermentation process. So the terroir of Belgium is unique in the world for the kind of yeast that we now have isolated, and now you can buy in a vial.
So you basically, there's a Belgian yeast that you import here to Austin.
Well, we buy it from a lab in California called White Labs.
All right, so it's actually cultured here in the States, and you're able
They culture it there. They went to Belgium and went to all the abbeys and the monasteries and got a petri dish and cultured that specific Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and now they make it en masse at the lab. And they also are making every year different varieties of it. Like I said, this is Saison 2, they call it. So the Saison 1 had all these flavors in it, but it took up to 2, 3, 4 weeks even to finish out. Homebrewers, that's fine. You know, you can wait. But at a commercial level, I need to put out beer as fast as possible. So this actually finishes out in about 4 or 5 days now, instead of 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So they hybridized it and made it better.
You're a relatively new brewery.
Year and a half we've been selling.
And now you're on store shelves, being served here at Alamo Drafthouse. I can watch a movie and order your beer. I think, how cool is that? Like within a year and a half from starting your brewery, that is possible.
Well, yeah. It really takes about 2 years to build a brewery in Austin and about $1 million. I didn't raise $1 million. I was able to use used equipment back in the day when there was used equipment available. We got some of the last used equipment available in the market. And we got a great deal. Our landlord was fantastic and helped us out a great deal. I have a lot of friends in the brewing industry here in Austin that helped in a big way. But it took about 2.5 years for us to finally make our first beer, to build the brewery. And then we've been serving it for about 1.5 years.
Oh, wow, You mentioned you grew up in India.
I did. My father worked for the State Department. So from first grade until I graduated high school from New Delhi, India.
Do you think that inspired your flavor profile, that to the things that you're making now? Is there any inspiration there? Is that just evolved more like when you?
I didn't really start drinking beer until I was 18. When I moved to Washington D.C. in 1984 after graduating high school, and for the first time had Chimay. And that was the first beer that I had ever tasted that just blew the back of my head off. The skies opened up. Like, this is beer? This is more like wine? And I don't even like wine. This is so much better. And everything opened up after that.
What was the inspiration for this particular beer? Was there anything in particular for the Saison D'Austin?
Well, I've been brewing Belgian beers for 20 years. They're my favorite kinds of beers. I brew every single style that I could find a recipe for and made some of my own up. And I drink all my brewer friends' beers. I drink all of their beers. They're all fantastic. But Belgian beer is my favorite in the world because of the complexity and the tradition behind it. And so that's usually the beer that I would homebrew at home. And so it took many years, decades, to perfect the Saison that I like to drink. Because a lot of this was during college and I couldn't afford Chimay. I can't afford a $13 bottle of beer. That's ridiculous. But I can brew it for $13, 5 gallons for $13 back in the day, no sweat. And so those are the beers that I really concentrated on learning how to brew and perfecting. We have a Belgian Golden, that's our flagship. And then the Saison D'Austin is pushing the envelope on Saisons, but it's the one that I really enjoyed. these kinds of beers. And we'll be coming out with other beers very soon. Now that the laws have changed and we have a tasting room and a bar and a stage for live music, most Sundays we have a local Texas original artist play. So it's mostly local, Texas-sourced music and beer venue that you can just take the bus almost to our, I mean, we're just off of South Congress and see some of the most amazing music in the world. Drink some of the freshest, most amazing beer in the world locally without having to leave Austin.
Very cool. I like that. And that is a perfect way to kind of wind us up. Thank you very much for coming out, Jordan. I appreciate it.
I had a great time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.